The sun had just begun to rise over the bustling city airport, casting a golden glow across the glass terminal. Passengers hurried past each other, rolling suitcases behind them, some excited for vacations, others anxious for business trips. Among the crowd was Marcus King, a tall, impeccably dressed man in a tailored navy suit. He carried nothing but a sleek black leather briefcase and an air of quiet confidence. His expression was calm, almost unreadable, as if nothing around him could disturb his peace. Marcus approached the check-in counter for first class, his boarding pass already on his phone. The gate agent, a young woman with a stiff smile, looked him over from head to toe. Her eyes lingered on his simple briefcase, his lack of flashy jewelry, and the fact that he was traveling alone. "Good morning, sir," she said politely, though her tone carried a subtle edge. "May I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it over without a word. The agent scanned it, then frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but there seems to be an issue with your reservation," she said. "First class is completely full. You'll have to take a seat in economy." Marcus raised an eyebrow, his voice calm but firm. "That's impossible. This ticket was purchased weeks ago. I have a confirmed seat." The agent's polite smile turned cold. "I understand, but there's nothing I can do. Please proceed to economy class." Nearby passengers glanced at the exchange, some whispering to each other. A well-dressed businessman smirked, clearly enjoying the scene. Marcus took a slow breath, his expression never changing. "I paid for a first-class ticket," he said evenly. "I expect to sit where I belong." The agent crossed her arms. "Sir, please don't make this difficult." Marcus stared at her for a moment, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Very well," he said softly. As he walked toward the economy section, he murmured under his breath, almost to himself, "You have no idea who you're talking to." No one noticed the slight curve of a knowing smile on his lips. To everyone else, he looked like just another passenger who'd been pushed aside. But Marcus knew something they didn't, and in just a few minutes, the entire flight crew would find out exactly who he was. Marcus walked calmly down the narrow aisle of the plane, his polished shoes clicking softly against the floor. The hum of passengers settling into their seats filled the air, laughter, the rustling of newspapers, and the occasional bark of an impatient traveler. Despite the chaos, Marcus moved with a measured, deliberate pace. His face revealed nothing, but there was a certain authority in his posture that didn't go unnoticed by a few sharp-eyed passengers. The first-class cabin, just a few steps behind him, was a stark contrast. Wide leather seats, glasses of champagne already being served, and smiling attendants ready to pamper their guests. Marcus should have been sitting there, relaxing with a glass of sparkling water before takeoff. Instead, he was being forced into the cramped economy section, row 18, middle seat. As he slipped into his assigned spot, the two passengers beside him, a middle-aged man in sweatpants and a young woman with oversized headphones, looked at him with thinly veiled irritation. Neither said a word, but their body language made it clear they didn't want him there. From the front of the plane, Jessica, a flight attendant in a crisp uniform, watched Marcus with a disapproving glare. She was tall, with perfectly styled hair and an air of superiority that clung to her like expensive perfume. As she walked past him, she muttered just loud enough for Marcus and those nearby to hear, "First class is for paying customers, not charity cases." Several passengers snickered quietly. Marcus, however, didn't flinch. He simply adjusted his tie and folded his hands in his lap, his calm demeanor completely unshaken. A few rows back, a young woman named Emma, a popular social media influencer, caught Jessica's comment on her phone camera. Emma had been casually filming her travel vlog when she noticed the tension building around Marcus. She whispered to her viewers, "Something's going on here, you guys. That man looks like he belongs in first class, but they're treating him like a stowaway. Stay tuned. This might get interesting." As more passengers boarded, murmurs spread about the incident at the gate. Some sided with Jessica, assuming Marcus must have done something wrong. Others shook their heads in quiet disapproval. When boarding was complete, Jessica approached Marcus again, this time more openly confrontational. She stood tall, hands on her hips, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Sir," she said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear, "I need to remind you that first-class seating is restricted. Trying to sneak up there will not be tolerated." Marcus looked up at her, his expression calm, his voice steady. "I never tried to sneak anywhere. I had a confirmed ticket, Jessica scoffed. Sure you did. Now please sit quietly so we can have an on-time departure. The confrontation caught the attention of the Captain Thomas, who had been informed of a problem passenger during boarding. Curious and slightly irritated, he glanced down the aisle from the cockpit, his brow furrowed. Meanwhile, Emma's livestream was gaining traction online. Viewers flooded the comments with outrage. This is discrimination. Stand your ground, man. Name and shame that airline. Jessica noticed Emma filming and snapped, Ma'am, you need to stop recording immediately. Emma held her phone higher and smiled defiantly. Sorry, it's a free country. Marcus remained silent, but his eyes flickered briefly toward Emma, as if acknowledging her presence. Then he calmly leaned back in his seat, hands folded, waiting. Jessica huffed in frustration, muttering under her breath as she stormed toward the cockpit. The stage was set. The tension on board was thick enough to cut with a knife. Marcus hadn't raised his voice once, yet his quiet defiance had already shifted the entire mood of the plane. Little did anyone know the storm was only beginning, and within minutes everyone would discover just how powerful the man in row 18 truly was. The cabin was buzzing with an uneasy energy. Passengers whispered among themselves, some glancing nervously at Marcus, others openly staring. The air felt thick, heavy with tension, and Marcus sat perfectly still, his expression as calm as ever. His silence was unsettling, almost intimidating, and it made Jessica even more determined to put him in his place. Jessica returned from the cockpit, her face flushed with irritation. She had just informed Captain Thomas about Marcus, painting a picture of a difficult passenger who was refusing to cooperate. Thomas, eager to avoid delays, told her to handle it quickly. Taking a deep breath, Jessica squared her shoulders and marched straight toward Marcus. This time, she didn't bother with the fake politeness she'd used earlier. Sir, she said sharply, her voice loud enough for most of the economy cabin to hear, I need you to stand up and explain yourself right now. Why were you insisting on a first-class seat when you clearly didn't purchase one? Heads turned. The hum of conversation died down to a hush. Marcus slowly lifted his gaze to meet hers. His voice when he spoke was calm and steady, carrying an authority that didn't match his outward appearance. I did purchase a first-class seat, he said simply. You chose to take it from me. Jessica scoffed, folding her arms. That's ridiculous. We don't take seats. Clearly there was a misunderstanding, and clearly you don't belong there. So instead of making this a bigger issue than it needs to be, please sit quietly. Before Marcus could respond, a man in a business suit seated 2 rows ahead called out, She's right. Some of us worked hard for those seats. Quit holding up the flight. Others murmured in agreement, while a few passengers muttered disapproval at Jessica's tone. The cabin was dividing into 2 sides, each choosing who they believed. From her seat, Emma was still live streaming, her phone angled discreetly toward the confrontation. She whispered to her viewers, You guys, this is escalating fast. He's being completely calm and she's losing it. Look at how everyone's reacting. The live stream chat exploded. This is so wrong. That flight attendant is out of line. Don't back down, Marcus. Jessica, noticing Emma filming, snapped, Turn that off right now or I'll have security remove you too. Emma smirked. Go ahead and try. The whole world's watching. A ripple of laughter and gasps went through the cabin. Jessica's face turned bright red. She turned back to Marcus, furious now. That's it, she hissed. Captain Thomas is coming back here himself, and if you don't comply, you're getting off this plane. Marcus didn't move. He didn't even blink. His calm was unnerving, like he was playing a game no one else understood. Moments later, Captain Thomas appeared, his presence commanding immediate attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, with streaks of gray in his hair, he carried himself like a man used to being in control. Sir? Thomas began, his tone firm but not unkind. I understand there's been some confusion about seating arrangements. I'm going to need you to step off the plane so we can sort this out properly. Marcus looked up at him slowly, then said in a measured voice, Captain, before you make that decision, you might want to be certain you understand who you're speaking to. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Several passengers gasped softly. Thomas frowned, irritated by the cryptic response. Sir, I don't care who you are. My responsibility is to this aircraft and its passengers. Now either you come with me peacefully, or we'll have airport security escort you. Phones came out everywhere. Emma's livestream viewer count skyrocketed as the drama unfolded. Marcus leaned back in his seat and said quietly, "Very well. Call security." Jessica smirked, certain she had won. She didn't realize that this single decision had just set into motion a chain of events that would shake the entire airline to its core. The cabin erupted into a storm of whispers and speculation as airport security was summoned. Marcus remained utterly composed, as though he had been expecting this moment all along. And in truth, he had. The atmosphere inside the cabin had shifted completely. Moments ago, there had been grumbling and scattered arguments among passengers. Now there was only tense, electric silence as everyone waited for what would happen next. Marcus sat motionless, his posture upright and dignified. It was as if he were made of stone, unmoved by the chaos swirling around him. Jessica, on the other hand, paced like a cornered animal. Her perfect composure from earlier had cracked, and frustration now radiated off her in waves. She kept glancing at Marcus, then at Emma, whose phone was still raised and streaming to tens of thousands, of viewers. Each second brought more online comments scrolling across Emma's screen. "This is insane! How can they treat him like this? We need names. Airline needs to pay." Jessica's jaw clenched. The more viral this became, the more trouble she sensed. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. In her mind, Marcus was the problem. And if she didn't make him submit, she'd lose face entirely. The sound of heavy footsteps broke the tension. Two uniformed airport security officers, Kim and Rodriguez, boarded the plane. Their presence was commanding, their expressions serious as they made their way down the narrow aisle. A hush fell over the cabin. Captain Thomas followed close behind, his voice sharp as he addressed Marcus. "Sir, this is your final chance to cooperate peacefully," Thomas said. "Stand up, collect your belongings, and come with us to sort this out." Marcus slowly turned his head, meeting Thomas's gaze. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the cabin with surprising strength. "Captain, you're about to make a decision you will regret for the rest of your career. Are you certain you want to proceed?" The cryptic statement sent a murmur through the crowd. Emma's live stream exploded with speculation. "Whoa, what does he mean by that? This guy has serious confidence. Plot twist coming, I can feel it." Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, please. Enough of this act. He's just some entitled passenger trying to make a scene." She turned to the security officers. "Take him off this plane now." Rodriguez and Kim exchanged a glance. Something about Marcus's calm demeanor gave them pause, but protocol was protocol. They stepped forward. Marcus didn't move. Instead, he reached into his briefcase with slow, deliberate motions, careful not to alarm anyone. From it, he retrieved a sleek black phone and a slim leather wallet. "I suggest you check my credentials before you take another step," Marcus said evenly, extending the wallet toward Rodriguez. Jessica let out a sharp laugh. "Credentials? What are you, a secret agent?" Rodriguez accepted the wallet and flipped it open. His eyes widened almost instantly. His face drained of color as he glanced at Marcus, then at Captain Thomas. Captain," Rodriguez stammered. You might want to take a look at this." Thomas frowned, irritated, and snatched the wallet. His irritation turned to shock as he scanned the ID card inside. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. "What is it?" Jessica demanded, stepping closer. Thomas swallowed hard. His voice trembled slightly when he spoke. This man isn't just a passenger. He's Marcus King, CEO and majority owner of this entire airline." The cabin erupted in gasps. A few passengers actually clapped hands over their mouths. Emma's live stream chat went berserk. "What? The CEO? OMG! Jessica is done. This is going viral like crazy." Jessica froze, her face drained of color. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. Marcus stood slowly, finally revealing the full height and presence he had been keeping contained. When he spoke, his voice was calm but laced with steel. "No mistake. You denied me the seat I paid for, the seat I own. You disrespected me in front of my company's passengers, and now you've brought security onto my plane to remove me." He turned his gaze to Captain Thomas, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Captain, you grounded this flight to confront me. Now I'm grounding this flight, permanently." The finality in his tone sent a chill down everyone's spine. Passengers erupted in excited whispers. Phones were raised everywhere, recording history in the making. Jessica stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a seat. Emma whispered dramatically into her phone camera. "Oh, My God, you guys... He's literally the CEO. This flight is about to turn into the story of the year. As Marcus's words hung in the charged air, everyone realized that the balance of power had just flipped completely, and the fallout was only beginning. The cabin was no longer just a plane filled with passengers. It had transformed into a stage where a shocking drama was unfolding. The moment Marcus King's true identity was revealed, the atmosphere shifted like a storm front rolling in. The murmurs of disbelief grew into loud gasps, and phones were held high, their cameras flashing. Emma's livestream viewer count skyrocketed into the millions, the comment feed racing so fast it was impossible to read every message. I knew it! The CEO is on the plane. Jessica is going to lose her job in 2 years. I've never seen anything like this before. Jessica, who just minutes ago had been standing tall and confident, now looked like a ship caught in a hurricane. Her face turned pale, her lips trembling as she struggled to find her voice. But this isn't real, she stammered, her gaze darting between Marcus and Captain Thomas. There's no way he's the CEO, I didn't know. Marcus turned his calm, piercing gaze toward her. And that, he said smoothly, is precisely the problem. You didn't care to know. You assumed. His voice wasn't raised, but its controlled power cut through the cabin like a blade. Every passenger could hear him clearly. Jessica stumbled backward, her hands shaking. Captain Thomas cleared his throat, his own voice unsteady. Mr. King, this is a misunderstanding. If I had known... Marcus held up a single hand and the captain fell silent immediately. It was a subtle gesture, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. No, Marcus said evenly. This was no misunderstanding. It was a choice. You all chose to treat me as less than worthy. You saw a well-dressed black man and assumed he didn't belong. You dismissed my words, my ticket, my presence, and now you face the consequences of those choices. The cabin was silent except for the hum of the plane's engines and the frantic tapping of passengers posting updates online. Even Emma, who had been narrating every second for her audience, was momentarily speechless. Jessica tried to recover, her voice cracking as she attempted to defend herself. I was just following procedure, she said weakly. I didn't mean any harm. I was trying to do my job. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly, but he remained composed. Your job is to ensure every passenger is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of who they are or where they sit. You failed, spectacularly. Jessica's shoulders slumped. The weight of her mistake settled over her like a physical burden. She glanced toward the cockpit, silently pleading for Captain Thomas to intervene, but he was staring at the floor, avoiding her gaze entirely. Marcus took a step forward, his presence commanding the entire cabin. As CEO, my responsibility is to this airline and its reputation. And right now, both are on the line. This flight will not take off until this situation is addressed. There was a collective intake of breath as passengers realized what he meant. The plane wasn't just delayed. Marcus was about to ground it entirely. Emma, regaining her voice, whispered into her phone, You guys, this is historic. He's literally stopping the whole flight. Nobody's ever seen anything like this before. Jessica's knees buckled slightly. Wait, please, she begged, her tone desperate now. Don't ruin my career over this. I can apologize. I'll apologize to you, to everyone. Marcus studied her for a long, heavy moment. Then he shook his head slowly. An apology isn't enough. This isn't just about you, Jessica. This is about every passenger who has ever been humiliated, dismissed, or mistreated by the very people entrusted with their safety and comfort. If I let this slide, I'm telling the world that this behavior is acceptable, and it is not. The passengers erupted in cheers and applause. Even those who had initially doubted Marcus now saw the truth. They shouted words of support. Stand your ground. We're with you, Marcus. Fire her! The chants grew louder, until the entire cabin seemed united in one voice. Jessica covered her face with her hands, trembling. Marcus turned to Captain Thomas, who stood rigidly at attention, sweat beading on his forehead. Captain, Marcus said, his tone cutting and precise. You allowed this to happen under your command. You failed to investigate, failed to de-escalate, and failed to uphold the standards of this airline. Thomas opened his mouth, but Marcus silenced him with a sharp glance. As of this moment, Marcus continued, you are relieved of duty. Both you and Jessica will disembark immediately. Gasps echoed through the cabin. Jessica let out a strangled sob while Thomas's face turned ashen. You can't just fire me here and now, Thomas stammered. Marcus's voice was ice. I just did. Security officers Kim and Rodriguez stepped forward, ready to escort the disgraced employees off the plane. Jessica tried to resist, but Rodriguez firmly guided her down the aisle. Thomas followed, his steps heavy and reluctant. As they were led away, Marcus addressed the passengers. His voice softened slightly, though it still carried authority. To everyone here today, he said, I deeply apologize for what you've witnessed. You deserve better. This company must do better. And starting today, it will. The cabin erupted into cheers once more. Emma's livestream chat exploded with praise and admiration. Legend. Best CEO ever. I'm never flying another airline again. Marcus turned to the flight attendants who remained, their faces pale and stunned. This flight will not depart until I personally ensure that every single passenger is accommodated and treated with respect, he declared. He then turned and calmly walked toward the cockpit, his phone already in hand. The entire plane fell silent, watching as he prepared to make a call that would send shockwaves through the entire airline industry. At that moment, it was clear to everyone, Marcus King wasn't just a passenger. He was a force of justice, and he was about to rewrite the rules of the skies. The passengers were still, buzzing from what they had just witnessed. A CEO, grounding an entire flight and firing the captain and lead flight attendant right in front of them. Phones were raised high, capturing every angle. Emma's livestream had now crossed 5 million viewers, making this one of the most watched live events in aviation history. But Marcus King wasn't finished. As Jessica and Captain Thomas were escorted off the plane by security officers Kim and Rodriguez, the atmosphere shifted again. The clapping and cheers faded into silence. Marcus stood tall in the center of the aisle, his posture radiating calm power. His tailored suit was immaculate, a sharp contrast to the chaos around him. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus said, his deep, commanding voice carrying through the cabin without a microphone. You have all witnessed something unacceptable today. Behavior that violates the core values of this airline and of human decency. I promise you this, what happened will not be buried or ignored. It ends today. Applause broke out again, this time quieter, more reverent. People were beginning to realize that this wasn't just a fight over a seat. This was about systemic change. From the back of the plane, a passenger shouted, "You tell him, Marcus," followed by another yelling, "Finally someone holding them accountable." Emma, still narrating into her phone, whispered, "Guys, this is history. He's not just a CEO. He's like a one-man revolution right now." Marcus took a deep breath and scanned the faces around him. Business travelers, families with children, elderly passengers. All of them had been silent witnesses to discrimination. "I want you to understand something," Marcus said, his voice steady. "This isn't about me getting a first-class seat. This is about what that seat represents. Access, equality, and respect. When people are denied those things based on assumptions or prejudice, everyone loses." His words struck a chord. Some passengers had tears in their eyes. Others nodded vigorously, clearly moved. He continued, "Every passenger, whether they paid for economy or first class, deserves to feel safe and valued. That didn't happen here today. And because of that, this airline will now face a reckoning." The murmurs swelled again, passengers exchanging stunned looks. Many couldn't believe they were hearing this directly from the CEO himself. One man, a father traveling with his young daughter, raised his hand hesitantly. "Mr. King," he said, his voice shaking slightly, I just want to say thank you. My wife and I were worried about flying because of how people treat us. What you're doing right now, it means more than you know." Marcus's expression softened. He nodded respectfully to the man. "You shouldn't have to thank me for basic human dignity," he replied. "But I promise you, by the time this flight lands, things will be different." Marcus turned and walked deliberately toward the cockpit, his phone already in his hand. The passengers watched in breathless silence as he dialed a direct number, one reserved only for emergencies and top-level communications. On the third ring, a crisp female voice answered. "Central Command, this is Director Hayes." "Elaine, it's Marcus King," he said, his voice sharp and unyielding. "I need you to listen carefully. Flight 782 is grounded indefinitely until further notice. I want a replacement crew sent immediately, and I want the full internal investigation team waiting at the gate when we land." There was a stunned pause on the other end. "Marcus, now what happened?" Elaine asked cautiously. "What happened," Marcus replied, glancing back at the passengers, "is that our leadership failed. Captain Thomas allowed open discrimination to escalate unchecked. And Jessica, our senior flight attendant, engaged in outright humiliation of a paying customer." "Me." Gasps rippled through the cabin as the passengers overheard. Elaine inhaled sharply. "Marcus, are you saying—" "Yes," he cut in. "And I'm not just a passenger today. I'm acting as CEO. Effective immediately, Thomas and Jessica are terminated. Security will escort them from the premises and their access to company systems is revoked." Elaine's voice was steady but urgent. "Understood. I'll initiate the process. But Marcus, grounding an entire flight like this, there will be backlash." "The media," Marcus's tone hardened. "The media is already watching. This entire incident has been live-streamed to millions. If we try to bury this, we'll be finished by morning. Transparency is our only option." Elaine didn't argue. "Consider it done. Replacement crew will be ready in 30 minutes. Marcus, are you okay?" Marcus's jaw tightened. He wasn't okay, not even close. But this wasn't about him. "I will be," he said finally, then ended the call. Turning point in the cabin, when Marcus turned back toward the passengers, every eye was on him. He exhaled slowly and addressed them with a quiet authority. "Your flight will continue, but not until we have a crew worthy of serving you. You all deserve better than what you experienced today." A wave of relieved applause swept through the cabin. Some people even stood, clapping and cheering. At that moment, Emma stepped forward, trembling slightly as she held out her phone. "Mr. King, I think you should see this." She showed him the live stream. Over 7.2 million people were watching live. The chat was an endless flood of support, outrage, and calls for change. Marcus studied the screen for a moment, then looked up. His voice dropped to a low, powerful register. "This isn't just a viral moment," he said. "This is a wake-up call for the entire industry." Jessica, still standing near the exit with security flanking her, began to sob uncontrollably. "Marcus, please. I was wrong, okay? I'll do anything. Don't destroy me over this." Marcus's face remained impassive. "Jessica, you destroyed yourself the moment you chose humiliation over humanity. This isn't about vengeance. It's about accountability." He gestured to Security Officer Kim. "Please escort her off the aircraft." Kim nodded and guided Jessica down the aisle as the passengers watched silently. Some shook their heads in disgust, others whispered among themselves. Captain Thomas tried one last desperate plea. "Marcus, I've been flying for 25 years. Don't do this. My career—" "Your career," Marcus interrupted, "was built on trust. And today you shattered that trust. You didn't just fail me. You failed every passenger on this plane." With that, Thomas was escorted out, his head bowed in shame. Once the exits were cleared, Marcus returned to the front of the cabin. His expression softened slightly as he addressed the remaining flight attendants and passengers. "This airline was founded on the principle of service," he said, his voice carrying conviction. "Somewhere along the way we lost sight of that. But starting today we begin again." He turned to Emma, who was still streaming. "Keep recording," he instructed. "The world deserves to see what happens next." Marcus then announced a series of immediate reforms. Mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all employees, a new zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and a passenger advocacy program to ensure accountability. The cabin erupted in cheers once more. People hugged each other, some crying openly. As the replacement crew boarded and began preparing the plane for departure, Marcus finally allowed himself to sit. He closed his eyes briefly. Exhaustion etched into his features. For the first time since the confrontation began, he felt the weight of what had just happened. He hadn't just saved a flight. He had sparked a movement. Emma's voice rang out over the cheering. "Ladies and gentlemen, you just witnessed history." Marcus King didn't just fire a captain and a flight attendant. He fired up an entire nation. Marcus opened his eyes and allowed himself a small, tired smile. The storm had broken, but the real work was only beginning. The replacement crew moved quickly and professionally, restoring calm to the cabin, as if they'd been preparing for this moment their entire careers. The new captain, a woman named Captain Miller, greeted passengers warmly, apologizing for the earlier chaos and assuring them that their safety and comfort were her top priority. Her calm, confident demeanor was a sharp contrast to Captain Thomas's arrogance, and it immediately eased the lingering tension. Marcus sat quietly in his first-class seat now, not as a privilege, but as a symbol of what he had just fought for. Around him, murmurs of gratitude filled the air. Passengers leaned across aisles, recounting the events to one another, some still visibly emotional. Emma, still clutching her phone, approached Marcus cautiously. "Mr. King," she said softly, "I don't know if you realize how big this is. The live stream isn't just trending. It's dominating every social media platform. News outlets are picking it up too. They're calling you the CEO who grounded a plane for justice." Marcus gave a faint, tired smile. "Catchy headline," he said dryly. "But this isn't about me becoming a meme. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what I did today." Emma nodded, clearly moved. "It's already working. People are flooding the airline's social media, demanding change. There are hashtags everywhere. You've started something huge." Marcus's eyes softened as he looked at her. "Good, but hashtags won't fix the system. Real action will." Just then, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was Elaine Hayes, the director of Central Operations. Marcus answered immediately. "Marcus," Elaine's voice was urgent but steady. "The footage has reached corporate headquarters. The board is in an emergency meeting right now. They want to speak with you as soon as you land." "I figured they would," Marcus replied. "Let them know I'll meet them directly after we land. And Elaine, make sure they understand this isn't a negotiation. We're rebuilding from the ground up." There was a pause, then Elaine said, "Understood. And Marcus, everyone here supports what you're doing. We've needed this kind of leadership for a long time." Marcus's voice softened slightly. "Thank you, Elaine. I'll see you soon." When he hung up, Emma's eyes were wide with excitement. "You're going straight to headquarters after this?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, what happened here was just the beginning. Now the real battle starts." As the plane prepared for takeoff, several passengers came forward to personally thank Marcus. The father who had spoken earlier knelt beside Marcus's seat, his young daughter clinging shyly to his arm. "Mr. King, I just want to say, you gave my little girl hope today. She saw someone stand up for what's right. That means the world to us." Marcus's expression softened as he leaned forward. "She's the reason I did it," he said, smiling gently at the girl. "Because every child deserves to grow up believing they matter." The little girl's face lit up, and she hugged Marcus tightly before returning to her seat. As the engines roared to life and the plane taxied down the runway, Marcus stood once more addressing the passengers. "Today was difficult," he said, his voice strong despite his exhaustion, "but I promise you this. When you fly with this airline again, it will be different. Not perfect, change takes time, but better. Because every single one of you deserves respect." The cabin erupted in applause, louder and more unified than ever before. Marcus sat back down, closing his eyes briefly as the plane lifted into the sky, carrying not just passengers but a new era of accountability and hope. The plane touched down smoothly at the airline's main hub, greeted by a swarm of flashing lights and news crews waiting just beyond the tarmac. Word of the incident had spread like wildfire. What started as a live stream by Emma had now become global news, sparking debates about discrimination, corporate accountability, and the responsibility of leadership in modern times. Marcus sat silently for a moment as the plane rolled to a stop. He could feel the weight of what lay ahead pressing down on his shoulders. This was no longer just about a single flight or a single injustice. It was about an entire industry, and the world was watching. Captain Miller's calm voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our destination. Please remain seated as we prepare to deplane. On behalf of the new crew, thank you for your patience and courage during today's unprecedented events." The passengers applauded warmly. Many of them turned to Marcus with looks of gratitude, some even snapping photos, though most now regarded him with deep respect rather than curiosity. As Marcus exited the plane, a wall of cameras and microphones surged forward. Security personnel held the crowd back, creating a clear path. Marcus walked with quiet confidence, flanked by Emma, who had become an unlikely ally, and two senior executives who had rushed to the airport to meet him. Reporters shouted questions. "Mr. King, why did you ground the flight?" Will there be lawsuits against the crew? Is this the start of a major shakeup at the airline? Marcus paused briefly at the top of the steps, his voice carrying over the noise. This isn't about lawsuits or blame, he said firmly. This is about rebuilding trust. Today we took the first step toward making sure every passenger, every human being, is treated with dignity and respect. His words silenced the crowd for a beat before the shouting resumed, louder than before. Marcus didn't engage further. He simply continued toward the waiting vehicles, his resolve unshaken. Within the hour, Marcus was seated at the head of a long, sleek conference table at corporate headquarters. The board of directors sat opposite him, their faces a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. One board member, an older man with a sharp suit and sharper tongue, spoke first. Marcus, what you did today was dramatic. You've put this airline under a microscope. The financial implications alone could be catastrophic. Marcus leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. What's catastrophic, he said evenly, is allowing discrimination and abuse to continue unchecked. What happened on Flight 782 wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a broken system. If we don't act decisively, this company won't just lose money, it will lose its soul. Silence followed. Then slowly another board member, a woman with kind eyes, nodded. He's right. We've been avoiding these issues for too long. It's time we confront them head on. Marcus outlined his plan: immediate training programs, a zero-tolerance policy for misconduct, an independent passenger advocacy committee, and a transparent reporting system accessible to both employees and customers. By the time he finished, the room was buzzing with cautious optimism. Meanwhile, Emma's live stream had reached 12 million views and counting.
She had become the unexpected voice of the passengers, her narration giving the world an intimate view of the events as they unfolded. As Marcus exited the meeting hours later, Emma approached him with a shy smile.
People are calling this the flight that changed everything, she said. You've started a movement, Marcus. Marcus smiled faintly, exhaustion evident in his eyes. No, he replied. We started a movement. You, me, every passenger on that plane, even the ones who spoke up online. This is bigger than any one person. Later that evening, Marcus addressed the media in a carefully prepared press conference. The backdrop was simple, the airline's logo alongside the words integrity, respect, change. He concluded his speech with a powerful message. Today was about more than a flight. It was about proving that when we stand up for what's right, we can change the course of history, not just for this airline, but for every industry, every company, and every individual who's ever been told they don't belong. As the cameras flashed, Marcus glanced toward Emma and the passengers seated in the front row. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time he felt hope. A new chapter had begun, one where every voice mattered, and every seat, whether in first class or economy, represented equality and respect. And with that, Flight 782 became more than just a flight. It became a symbol of change.